Okay, just 1 or 2 minutes. I will review what we discussed in the previous class. So previous class we discussed about the afferent arteriole and as well as efferent arteriole and its endothelium, and we came to know that endothelium, some fenestrations will be there, approximately some 100 fenestrations, sorry, 100 fenestrations will be there in the individual epithelium, more than 100 to 1000 fenestrations will be there. And apart from that, we discussed about the basement membrane, and we also came to know that basement membrane and as well as endothelium are highly negatively charged. That means it is packed with the negatively charged molecules. And apart from that, we discussed about Bowman's capsule, and we also discussed that between each epithelium, that is visceral epithelium, you can see this diaphragm will be there. And apart this is made up of a protein called nephrin, and what I can say, the leakage, approximately the size of this diaphragm is 20 to 30 nanometers. This is what actually we discussed in the previous class. Apart from that, before discussing today, we are going to discuss about the mechanism of urine formation. So to understand this concept, we have to understand one important thing. Individually, when we start to discuss about glomerular, so mechanism of urine formation can be discussed under three headings: glomerular filtration, selective reabsorption, and tubular secretion. It's very difficult to discuss individually. That means each and every heading individually, if we want to discuss, it becomes practically difficult. Why? Because the glomerular filtration, it depends on selective reabsorption and the tubular secretion. Similarly, selective reabsorption depends on filtration and secretion. Like every point is depending on the second and third point. That means two other points. So this becomes very complicated to discuss it individually. But still, I will try to discuss the individually. That means we'll start with the glomerular filtration. We already partly we understood that Bowman's capsule. So from there, the filtration will start. And then the filtrate will enter into the, which one? 1 second. Yeah. So here the filtration will take place, this Bowman's capsule, and then filtrate will enter into the proximal convoluted tubule, loop of Henle, distal convoluted tubule. And so many things what we discussed in the previous class, actually we are little bit deviating from what we discussed in the previous class. Reasons are there. A little bit of deviations will be there because I have drawn the diagram of nephron like this, but actually it is not like this. Nephron is something different. That means the original nephron is something different. For our convenient, I have drawn the nephron like this. Even in the textbook also, they will show like this. And second thing is, once the filtration is over, the filtrate will start to move in this area, in this tube. That is, we call it as either tube or lumen. And you can see that in one diagram I have shown in the last class, that you observe that this is the proximal convoluted tubule. I have drawn the cell like this. You can see that the movement of the molecules are from cell to outside the cell, and then some molecules are entering inside the tube. That means molecules will enter inside the tube and some molecules will move outside the tube. That means both are possible. When any particular molecules, when it is moving out of the tube, then we call it as reabsorption. That means it enters into the blood circulation. When any molecule enters inside the tube, then we call it as secretion. Whether you followed this concept or not, I want a clarity from you. It is compulsory you have to understand this concept. I repeat again, here the filtration will take place. The filtrate is moving in the tube, and any molecules, if it moves out of the tube, then we call it as reabsorption. If any molecule moves inside the tube here, in this tube, that means proximal or loop of Henle or distal convoluted tubule, if anything moves inside the tube, we call it as secretion. Followed this concept? Anybody is unable to understand, you tell me to repeat, I will repeat. Everybody is able to understand this concept. Here filtration, here some particular substances which are required for the body, they will move out of the tube into the blood circulation. We call it as reabsorption. And some substances will move inside the tube here or here anywhere, and we call it as secretion. Logic you understand? Are you able to understand the concept here? Can I move forward? Anybody is unable to understand? Are you able to
Repeat it once.
Sir, please, one second if you repeat.
1 second. Okay. See, here the filtration is taking place. Are you able to understand? Consider
Yes, sir.
some 100 ml is entering into the tube. right? 100 ml is entering means 1 ml is coming out as urine. Consider. That means 99 ml is reabsorbed. That means 99 ml is going out of the tube. I repeat again, 100 ml filtered and 100 ml of filtrate is moving in the tube. And finally, you got only 1 ml here. That means 99 ml is disappeared. Where it went? It is moving out of the tube, right? Correct or not? Before it reached the end, it is moving out of the tube. So we call it as reabsorption. That means how many ml is not reabsorbed? 1 ml is not reabsorbed, that is excreted in the form of urine. That means even though 100 ml filtration takes place, so maximum 99% is reabsorbed into the body. Only 1 ml is coming out as urine. That is called reabsorption. That is the first point you have to remember. Second thing is, some substances are there in the interstitial fluid. They enter inside the tube in the middle. For example, I think you heard about urea. Have you heard about urea? Have you heard about urea?
Sir.
Yeah, urea created.
Yes, sir.
So they enter from here. They will not come from here. They will go backdoor method. That means they will enter in the different places of this particular tubule. They enter from here to here. That means some substances are added into the tube. Some substances are removed from the tube. That means substances which are removed from the tube is 99%. Almost everything is removed. Only unnecessary wastage products will get excreted out from the body. That is only one. 99 ml is reabsorbed. I think you got the clarity. Substances which are moving out of the tube into the blood circulation is called as reabsorption. Substances which are entering into the tube from the blood circulation, it is called as secretion. Is it clear or not? Logic you understand?
Yes,
So we are discussing the concept under three heading: glomerular filtration and selective reabsorption and tubular secretion. Glomerular filtration is understood. That means like blood is filtered in the glomerular. That means in the Bowman's capsule, the filtrate will come. Then reabsorption. So why it is selective reabsorption? Selective means yes, everything will not get reabsorbed. Only selective substances, selective molecules will get reabsorbed. That's why we call it as selective reabsorption. That means some molecules, they will move out of the, which one, tubule into the blood circulation. So that is reabsorption. Some molecules, they enter into the tube from the blood. So that is called as tubular secretion. So one by one we will discuss, then slowly you can understand the concept here. I'm not going fast. I will go very slowly in this area. So thereby you can understand. Now you observe this one very carefully. Total, for example, per minute, I'm talking everything is per minute. 5,000 ml of blood or 5 liters of the blood is pumped from the heart per minute. From the heart. In this 5,000 ml, 1,000 ml or 1 liter of blood per minute, it will reach the kidney. That means 20% approximately. And 1,000 ml of the blood which reaches the kidney, don't think that all the 1,000 ml will get filtered. Because in this 1,000 ml of blood, 400 ml or 40% of the blood is cells only. That means RBC, WBC, platelets. It cannot be filtered. So you forget about it. That means remaining how much? 60%. 60% means how much? 600 ml. That is plasma. Are you able to understand? 5,000 ml is pumped from heart. 1,000 ml reaches the kidney. In that 1,000 ml, 40%, that is 400 ml is cells. And remaining balance is 600 ml. That is 60%. That is plasma. And this 60% of the plasma, don't think that all the 60% will get filtered. In that 60% also, plasma proteins will be there. Large molecular weight substances are there. The substances which is having more than 65,000 molecular weight substances cannot be filtered, the protein. And then negatively charged substances cannot be filtered. So that means approximately 100 to 120 ml of what is that? Blood can be filtered per minute. Are you able to understand? That means heart is pumping 5,000 ml, 1,000 ml reaches kidney, and then 40% cells are there. Forget about it. 60% of plasma. In this 600 ml of plasma, 100 to 120 ml will get filtered in the Bowman's capsule. That means 120 ml enters into the Bowman's capsule. In that means in that 100 to 125 ml, 120 ml, 65% is reabsorbed in PCT. That means proximal convoluted tubule. 12 to 15% is reabsorbed in loop of Henle. 15% is reabsorbed in distal convoluted tubule. And 2 to 3% is reabsorbed in collecting tubule. And finally, 1% will remain, which is excreted as urine. That means you can imagine that filtration first we are going to discuss. Then later on, we have to discuss this concept, that is reabsorption, which is taking place in the different parts of the proximal convoluted tubule, loop of Henle, distal convoluted tubule, and collecting tubule. And finally, 1% is excreted as urine per minute. Then it is approximately 1500 ml or 1.5 liters of urine excreted per day. Till now, we have discussed only minute. Then per day, that means the amount of urine which we will excrete is 1500 ml to or 1500 ml or 1.5 liters of urine is excreted per day. Then here the trick comes here. Then we cannot express like that. We have to give some range. Listen carefully. The range is the science. That means books will tell that 500 ml to 3500 ml. This is the range. Are you able to understand? This is the range. 500 ml to 3500 ml. Then you should get one doubt. Why this range? Range is too much, from 500 ml to 3500 ml. So why they decided this values, 500 ml to 3500 ml? Now you try to understand the concept. You know that substances, some substances are reabsorbed, some substances are excreted. All these substances are not in the powder form or tablet form or capsule form. They are dissolved in water. What is the solvent here? Water. So they are dissolved in water. So that means, so you require some water to dissolve these particular solutes. So you definitely require water. The minimum amount of water which you require to eliminate the waste is 500 ml. Minimum it is required. That much amount of water is required to eliminate the waste. And you just imagine, if you consume less amount of water than this, that means wastage will get accumulated in your body. Then why this 3500 ml? That means maximum urine output should be 3500 ml. See, 3500 ml, on what basis we are deciding means, you may be very interested to listen this one. Consider you are going to sleep for 8 hours night, 7 or 8 hours or 9 hours you are going to sleep. So 8 hours or 9 hours you are sleeping means, what is actually healthy pattern means 8 to 9 hours you should not get up, even for a toilet also. That means you are not supposed to go to urine during the night time. But most of the people actually some people they may wake up one time, some they may wake up 2 times or 3 times. That means your urine output is more. So the more amount of urine is accumulated, then automatically during the sleep you will get up more time. Sleep is anabolism. Sleep is anabolism, synthetic pathway. I think you studied in biochemistry that anabolism will take place during night time. Catabolism will take place during the daytime. So during the synthetic process, every now and then if you disturb yourself getting up for passing the urine, then automatically your anabolic pathway will get disturbed. So that's why you are not supposed to consume more amount of water, and thereby you should not wake up during the night time some 2 or 3 times or 4 times. Immediately you will ask one question, sir, I will wake up 3 or 4 times to go to toilet. No, don't ask these questions. This is the reason why we say that it should not be more than 3500. If it is more than 3000, not forget about 3500. If it is more than 2000 itself, you will wake up 2 to 3 times. Of course, so many factors are there. This problem, that means 3500 ml problem, is more in females when compared to males. That is another factor, because they have an extra organ will be the uterus. So that uterus will have an impact on the kidney. So that's why they will have more complicated problems in getting up during the night time when compared to males. So that's why we are giving the range. That means this is the amount of the water. 500 ml is the minimum amount of the water which is required to eliminate the waste, because the waste should get dissolved in the water. Yeah. Now you come back here. Next point. These are the substances which will get reabsorbed, which are filtered, and as well as some they will get reabsorbed. Glucose, amino acids, urea, uric acid, sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium, chloride, like bicarbonate, creatinine, like the 10 number of vitamins, certain metabolites of hormones. So all these things will get filtered in the which one? Glomerulus or Bowman's capsule. But here one thing you have to understand, which may not be required, it may not be important now, but future it will become very important for you to understand the concept I am telling. You listen carefully this one. This actually, all these substances, what I can say, medical point of view, we divide into 3 categories: high threshold substances, low threshold substances, and non-threshold substances. I repeat again, high threshold substances, low threshold substances, and non-threshold substances. What is the meaning? High threshold substances means substances which will get 100% absorbed. That means the substances which will get 100%, they will get reabsorbed into the body. They are called as high threshold substances. Example, glucose and amino acid. Then low threshold substances are there, like what about urea? Urea is a low threshold substances. That means absorbed, they are reabsorbed, but in small quantity. Maximum will get excreted from the body in the form of urine. But some amount of the urea will get reabsorbed into the body. Then which one is the non-threshold substance? Creatinine. Creatinine is the best example for non-threshold substances. That means total whatever the creatinine which reaches the kidney, everything should get everything will get eliminated from the body. Then all three, they have their own significance here. That means just if you check your blood and urine, that means how much percentage of high threshold substances are there and low threshold substances are there, and then non-threshold substances are there. Very easily we can assess your health. Very easy, that one. Then this high threshold substances, glucose and amino acid, no need to write an examination, but you remember this one. This glucose and amino acid, 100% they will get absorbed. First priority is glucose and amino acid. Once it crosses the Bowman's capsule, once it enters into the proximal convoluted tubule, 100% of this glucose and amino acid, rapidly it will get reabsorbed into the body. The kidney will not allow this glucose and amino acid to get excreted out from the body. But some problem is there here. The problem is both glucose and as well as amino acid, they have what you can say one limit will be there. For example, we call it as a renal threshold limit. That means amount of glucose or amount of amino acid which can be maximum amount of glucose and amino acid which can be reabsorbed by the kidney. That is called as renal threshold limit. One example I will tell you. For example, if you talk about the glucose, if glucose entry into the kidney, if it is more than 180 milligrams per day, 180 milligrams per 100 ml. I repeat again, if glucose entry into the kidney is more than 180 ml per, 180 mg per 100 ml of blood, then automatically glucose will start to get excreted out from in the form of in the urine. That is called as glucosuria. Diabetic individual, so when it is like glucose level is very high in their blood, automatically they will have a tendency to get excreted out from the body. And you have to understand that 180 mg is limit means. Don't think that, okay, 170 I will consume, whether it will reabsorb. Yes, it will get reabsorbed, but actually you are consuming more. That means you are putting more burden to the kidney to reabsorb. So what burden is there? It is its duty to reabsorb? No, don't think like that. Because all these substances, you just check it, glucose, amino acid, urea, uric acid, creatinine, or all what I can say, vitamins, hormones, etc., etc. You have to understand that they don't have the capacity to get reabsorbed. They have to take the help from the transporters. So that means, so the more amount of glucose, amino acids are coming into the, what I can say, urine, automatically it will put a burden on the kidney. Best example, diabetic. Consider you have the very nice non-vegetarian food, high levels of non-vegetarian food, then immediately within 2 hours, all this protein will get broken down into amino acid. So much amount of amino acid will come into the kidney. Then you have to understand that that much load of amino acid should get reabsorbed into the body. If it crosses the limit, then automatically amino acids will start to get excreted out from the urine. And people say that if you consume more amount of non-vegetarian food, you suffer from high blood pressure, etc. Blah blah blah. Something they will tell, but nobody will explain actually why it causes high blood pressure. That you are going to study now today. Okay. Next slide will go. Then before going through, you understand that what the filtration will take place in the glomerules. Actually, what is the size of the molecules? Also, you are able to understand. Now we have to understand certain things. That means, what are the different pressures which will influence the glomerular filtration. So that means 3 different types of, what is that, pressures are there. I will just highlight that one, you just to go through. One is glomerular capillary pressure, second one is capsular hydrostatic pressure, and glomerular osmotic pressure. Don't think that it is very complicated, it is very simple concept. One is glomerular capillary pressure. That is the pressure exerted by the blood on glomerular capillaries. In simple words, what we can say, the blood is moving in the capillaries, and blood will start to put some pressure on the capillaries. That means you heard about the blood vessels. It starts to put pressure on the blood vessel. So that is a positive pressure, and it promotes the filtration. That is around some 55 mmHg. And next one, capsular hydrostatic pressure. It is the pressure exerted by the fluid which is previously present in the capsular space. So if I tell like that, probably you can't understand. Now you go through the diagram. Now, for example, this is the blood is moving in this blood vessel, and this blood will start to put pressure on the, what is that, capillaries, and that is nothing but a glomerular capillary pressure. That is a positive. That means it promotes the filtration. Next one, what I told you, capillary hydrostatic pressure. So once the filtration is over, then filtrate will start to move from the capillary into the Bowman's capsule. This is the Bowman's capsule. And then this Bowman's capsule, and as well as between the capillary and the Bowman's capsule also some fluid is there. And this fluid, actually, it will not allow the further filtration of the, what I can say, blood. That means it will slow down the filtration because it start to get accumulated between the capillary and as well as between the Bowman's capsule. And already some particular amount of filtrate will be present in the Bowman's capsule. Very fast, it will not run into the proximal convoluted tubule. So that's where this filtrate will start to put negative pressure. It will slow down the filtration. That is called as capillary hydrostatic pressure. Again, we will go through what is capsular hydrostatic pressure. Pressure exerted by the fluid which is previously present in the capsular space of Bowman's capsule. So this is the capsular space, and this is the capsular space. So this will put a negative pressure. It will slow down the filtration. Then what is the third one? This is a negative pressure, 15 mmHg, glomerular osmotic pressure. It is the pressure exerted by the plasma proteins like albumin, globulin, etc. This opposes the filtration. Yes, genuine point. For example, you can see that this is the blood is moving. The green color one is the proteins, large sized proteins. It will be there on the surface of the capillaries, and thereby it will slow down the movement of the filtrate. That means slow down the movement of the substances which will get filtered. So because it is falling on the surface of the capillaries, so this is the negative pressure, glomerular osmotic pressure. That means I repeat again, the which one? Third one. So it is the pressure exerted by the plasma proteins like albumin, globulin, etc. So on the surface of the capillary, this opposes the filtration. It is around some 30 mmHg. Understand carefully. When I say that the plasma proteins, it will slow down the glomerular filtration. That means it will decrease the, what I can say, filtration. How much? That means it is understandable that when the protein content in your blood is very high, this value will change. I repeat again, when the protein content in your blood is very high, for example, lot of amount of protein is present in your blood, automatically instead of 30 mmHg, this value will get altered. Similarly, for example, glomerular capillary pressure, I told that 55 mmHg, it is a pressure exerted by the blood on glomerular capillaries. Consider a person is suffering from high blood pressure, then definitely this value will not be 55 mmHg. We are talking about a normal person, normal healthy person, resting stage we are talking. We are not talking about diabetic patient, we are not talking about hypertension patient, and we are not talking about the person who contain lot of amount of protein in the blood. That means all these factors will alter this one. Finally, we want what is the effective pressure which produces the filtration. For that, you have to understand effective filtration pressure. We just go through this point, you can understand. Effective filtration pressure is glomerular capillary pressure minus, this is the positive pressure, and these two are negative pressure. What is that? Capsular hydrostatic pressure, and then which one? Glomerular osmotic pressure. So these two are negative pressures. We are adding this one, 15 plus 30, and this one is a positive pressure, 55 mmHg. So finally, we are minusing the positive pressure with the minus pressure. 55 minus 45 is equal to 10 mmHg. So what you have to understand is 10 mmHg is the pressure required, which promotes the filtration. So the pressure required to force the blood plasma from glomerules into the capsular space of the Bowman's capsule is 10 mmHg. That means if any substance want to move out of the blood vessel into the Bowman's capsule, how much pressure is required? You require 10 mmHg. So day-to-day basis, if you think that constantly, if you are maintaining 10 mm, if you are assuming yourself that you can maintain 10 mmHg of the pressure throughout your life, forget about life, in 1 hour or something, then it is a big joke actually. Constantly, it will be changing. Constantly, very constantly, 10 mmHg will not be there. It will increase, decrease, increase, decrease. Constantly, it will be changing. then how it will be regulated then? That means constant fluctuation is there. It should be maintained 10 mmHg, isn't it? So that means how it can be maintained? It can be maintained. It will be maintained by so many factors are there. So we have to discuss those factors which will maintain this 10 mmHg. N number of factors are there. Hormones are there. Kidney itself will control this 10 mmHg. So many things are there. So one by one, we will discuss about this concept. Okay. Now, just go 1 second. Yeah. Now we have to discuss about the glomerular filtration rate. This is examination point of view important and very complicated topic, very interesting one. Glomerular filtration rate is the amount of fluid filtered through the glomerulus in both kidney each minute. That means the amount of filtration taking place per minute in both kidneys. So that is nothing but a glomerular filtration rate. In healthy males, the glomerular filtration rate is 125 ml per minute, and in females 105 ml per minute. In average, we will take 120 ml. GFR is important to maintain homeostasis. Obviously, it is extremely important to maintain homeostasis. You can understand later on. Very high GFR results in split filtration. Now you forget about this point. Try to understand. 1 second, we'll go back to one more diagram, then you can understand. Yeah. Here the filtration is taking place. Try to understand very carefully. I told you that in average we are taking 120 ml per minute. Okay. So this nephron represents the whole kidney. Consider, of course, every nephron will filter, but we are considering one nephron. 120 ml will get filtered. Then this is a standard value. Listen carefully. This is a standard value. Then slowly the filtrate will move here, right? It's moving like this. Then when 120 ml is there, the filtrate is moving like this, then automatically some substances will get reabsorbed into the body. Automatically it will come out of this particular tube, right? Instead of 120 ml, consider some 200 ml is filtered. Glomerular filtration rate is 120 ml average, but instead of that, the glomerular filtration rate become 200 ml. What will happen? Obviously, the movement of the filtrate will become very fast. It becomes very fast because it is 200 ml. Very fast the filtrate is moving. When the filtrate is moving very fast, then reabsorption process will become slow down. That means you require a slow movement of the normal movement of the filtrate to reabsorb the substances from the filtrate. But the movement of the filtrate become very fast that the reabsorption of the substances from the filtrate is not possible. That means effective reabsorption will not be there. When effective reabsorption is not there, means what is the meaning? Urine output will increase, and even substances which are required for the body will get excreted from the body. Are you able to understand the point? Listen carefully again. When glomerular filtration rate is high, instead of 120 ml, it becomes 200 ml. The movement of the filtrate will become very fast, and then to reabsorb the content from the filtrate is not possible because it is moving very fast, and finally even essential substance will get excreted out from the body. That is the first problem. That means what happens when the movement of the filtrate is very fast, that means glomerular filtration rate is very high. Consider glomerular filtration rate is very low. Instead of 120 ml, consider it is 60 ml or 70 ml. Then the filtrate will be moving very slowly, right? When it is moving very slowly, so very rapidly the substances will get reabsorbed from the body. Then automatically what will happen? Even the substances which are not at all required for the body, they will get reabsorbed into the body. And finally, you will get a very, very less amount of urine. So both are problematic. If high glomerular filtration is there, then reabsorption will be very poor. Elimination of the essential nutrients will take place. Consider if glomerular filtration is very low, then what happens? The filtrate will move very slowly. Not only essential substances, even non-essential substances also will get reabsorbed into the body. Then toxins also will get reabsorbed into the body. Usually, the question will arise which one is more dangerous, whether if glomerular filtration is very high or glomerular filtration is very low. Which one is more dangerous? Usually, when glomerular filtration rate is very high, then automatically what will happen? What you can say, more amount of the essential nutrients will be lost. When glomerular filtration rate is low, toxins will get reabsorbed. Generally, we think that the glomerular filtration rate is low, that is more dangerous because toxins will get reabsorbed into the body. unnecessary substance will get reabsorbed in the body. But actually, we are wrong. The most dangerous condition is when glomerular filtration rate is very high, the essential nutrients will get eliminated from the body. That is more dangerous when compared to the reabsorption of toxin. Why? The nutrients you cannot take back. Once you pass the urine, you cannot drink it. But the thing is, once the toxins are reabsorbed, you can eliminate in the next cycle. But the thing is, once it is eliminated, essential nutrients, you cannot take back it. So that's why loss of nutrients are more dangerous when compared to absorption of the toxin. This point you remember, it will be useful in the future. Okay, then you again come back to original point. So, yeah, no, which one? Yeah. So this is about the very high GFR. Now you read the sentence, you can understand. Very high GFR results in swift filtration. This leads to ineffective reabsorption by the renal tubule, and this results of loss of essential nutrients. If GFR becomes slow, even waste and toxins get reabsorbed by tubules. GFR can be regulated. That means to prevent this one. So many factors are there. So which will control the glomerular filtration rate. One is renal autoregulation, and second one is hormonal regulation, and third one is neural regulation. So first, that means renal autoregulation. The name itself indicates that what type of mechanism is there. Kidney itself will regulate. Hormonal regulation, that means hormones are going to control the which one, glomerular filtration rate. And neural regulation, this is not actually significant, but still we will discuss about this one. This third one is neural regulation. The first one is renal autoregulation. That is, what is that? First mechanism which controls the glomerular filtration rate. So under renal autoregulation, two mechanisms are there. One is myogenic mechanism, and second one is tubuloglomerular feedback. Both are important. Then you just focus on only heading, then you can understand myogenic mechanism. The name itself indicates that it is the property of a muscle. What about muscle? Which muscle? You go back to the blood vessel. That means in the first semester topic, the blood vessel is composed of tunica externa, tunica media, tunica interna. I think you remember tunica media, the middle layer. The middle layer contains smooth muscle. I think you remember that one. The smooth muscle is innervated with which one? Nervous system. So that means constantly this muscle which is present in the blood vessel, it will contract and as well as relax according to the situation, according to the requirement. It will contract and as well as relax. That is myogenic mechanism. We are going to study that one. Next one, tubuloglomerular feedback. A very interesting name here, tubuloglomerular feedback. Tubulo, that means proximal convoluted tubule, or what you can say, distal convoluted tubule or loop of Henle. That is a tube. Tubuloglomerular, that means tubes are giving information to glomerular feedback. What type of information? Feedback it is giving. What is this feedback it will give? That means tubes are giving feedback to the glomerulus. So regarding the status of the nephron. So this is very interesting, but little complicated to understand, but it is very interesting mechanism. So first let us concentrate on which one? Myogenic mechanism. So this we will discuss in the next class. That means mechanisms we will discuss. Right now, any questions are there, you can ask. So you have some 4 minutes time. If possible, I may call you today also. That means evening session I may call. Are you ready after 5 or not possible?
Yes, sir.
You please discuss in the group and inform me. If you are okay with it, then I may call, because up to 5 o'clock it is packed. Some other classes are there. If you are okay, then you discuss in the group and tell me, inform me. Any doubts are there, now you can ask me. Okay. Any questions are there, you can ask.
Sir, you told the range is from 500 ml to 3500 ml, sir.
Yes, madam.
So it should be, should it be between, or it should be the correct this one?
Pardon, madam? It should be?
Should it be between 500 ml to 3500 ml, or it can be more?
It's always preferable to be 1000 ml to 1500 ml. But it should not be less than 500 ml. It should not be more than 3500 ml. According to my knowledge, even 3000 ml also is more. It's like it's really more.
Yes.
If you ask me, if you keep it aside the subject point of view, and if you ask me that is it okay, it's not okay. Definitely. If it is 1000 to 1500 ml, then it is fine, very good, according to me. Understood the point?
Yes, sir.
Any questions you can ask. Even last class, last topic also you can ask.
So why does a diabetic patient always urinate, sir? Like they urinate frequently, sir.
That anyhow, next we are going to discuss about the reabsorption. No, just now I told you that they are high threshold substances. That means at any cost we have to reabsorb all the glucose. That means whatever the glucose which is reaching the kidney. When high levels of glucose are present in the blood, then first you have to understand why high levels of glucose is present in the blood, because it is not moved to the cells. That means all the glucose are present in the blood, it is not moving towards the cells. So obviously the glucose will enter into the kidney. Then that much load of glucose cannot be reabsorbed by the which one?
Cells.
Which one? Proximal convoluted tubule. I'm not talking about any other. Only proximal convoluted tubule is concerned with reabsorption. Then automatically it will put burden on the kidney. Then it will get, what I can say, try to get eliminated. So glucose alone cannot go out. Even water also it will drop. Then water also will come along with the glucose. Then obviously we will go to toilet again and again. Are you able to understand? Glucose alone cannot get excreted. It will draw the water. So water will be wasted. We are not bothered about loss of, madam, you try to understand. We are least bothered about the loss of glucose. We are very much worried about loss of water. So much amount of water will be lost along with the glucose. Glycosuria. Are you able to understand the point or not? Now you'll be thinking that why we are worried about loss of water. It's big thing. It's a worst thing actually. So you constantly have to compensate the water. See, remember, you don't require water. You don't feel thirst, but still they will drink water because the mouth will become dry for them. Understood the point or not? It's not actually thirst. So just to compensate the loss of water through urine. See, usually we have to consume the water when what is that? When you feel, that means dehydration is there, that time we can drink water. But it is a loss of water due to the loss of glucose. Not only this one, madam. Even, for example, you heard about hypertension. Have you heard about hypertension?
Yes, sir.
People say that when you suffer from hypertension, it is understood you will be diabetic in future. Or some people say that if you are diabetic in future, you will become hypertension patient. So that also you will get clarity in the realms. Both are linked. The more glucose is present in your blood, that means you are very much prone to hypertension. No doubt about it. Hypertension or hypotension, depending on type of diabetes. Right. So this topic you have to understand, this chapter, then you can cover